Radio now presents Gene Shepard.
What do you mean? I know what a bunion is, for God's sakes. That's a kind of it's a white vegetable, and it's served creamed often and sliced. Cream bunions. Yeah. Well, it's kind of like a turnip, actually. It's a you don't see them very much anymore. You know, I don't know why. You know, there's certain vegetables that just aren't in style. Have you noticed that there is a style in vegetables, just like there's a style in shoes and stuff? For example, the bunion is not as popular as it once was. The good example of that is the rhubarb. The rhubarb now has just become actually only a phrase that is used occasionally by Joe Garagiola when he's describing a ball game. But yet a lot of people have never had rhubarb. See, it's not popular as it once was, you know. So, you know, it'd be really lousy to be a big farmer, and you've got this great big 2,000 acres in cultivation, and it turns out that the vegetable that you're growing becomes unpopular overnight. I mean, it's just like a clothing manufacturer, you know, who just sunk everything he's got into Nehru jackets. And there you are. You could. Well, I'll tell you. You know where you find Nehru jackets and stuff like these today. I went into a cars place the other day where they sell car parts. You know, one of these Western Auto type places, and see, I'm walking around in there. I just like to go in there and see. I like to look at car parts. I inherited this. See, my father enjoyed looking at socket wrenches. He never bought them. He just looked at socket wrenches, and so. I go in this place, and I'm with this friend of mine. He's going to actually buy a part. He was buying a gasket, and I said, "Well, what kind of a gasket you getting, Frank?" He said, "I don't know, a gasket." I said, "Well, you know, you have to know what kind of gasket. There's a lot of gaskets." And he said, "What do you mean? Don't bother me. Don't hassle me. Will you? I'm buying a gasket." I said, "Well, Frank, you know, just don't go and buy a gasket." He said, "Well, watch. I'm going to buy a gasket." So we go up to the guy behind the counter there, and he comes up, you know, the guy with the white shirt says Al over his jacket, and he says, "What do you have, guys?" And Frank says, "I'll have a gasket." I says, "Okay." And he reaches back, and the big bin, and he gives him a box, big long flat box, gives him a gasket. Frank paid him $4.22, and he bought a gasket. I didn't say anything about it. I mean, it was one of those things you just don't like to get involved. Obviously, there's some kind of hanky-panky going on there. I don't know what they're pushing there. But he says, he didn't even tell him what kind of a gasket, a head gasket or what, you know. So we bought a gasket. Well, at that point I realized there were hidden depths to my friend Frank. And so while we were in there, there was a wire basket there. It's a special, only this week. 10-pound bag of rags. It says brand new unused rags. Well, I haven't bought any rags recently, and I just thought I'd surprise him. I said, give me one of the 10-pound bags of rags there. And so they were $1.29. You get 10-pound bags of rags, comes in a plastic bag. It says, ideal for all uses to which a rag can be put. Now that makes sense. So I laid down $1.29. I got the 10-pound bag of rags, and I take it out in the car. It's a great big thing, see? So I get out in the car, and you could see the rags in this bag, all colors, all kinds of great-looking rags. So we get in the car, and I didn't want to ask Frank about this gasket he bought, especially since I noticed that they wrapped the gasket in last week's Daily News, and he took it and he put it in the trunk and hid it under the tire. So I don't know what the hell kind of gasket he was buying. So we got in the car, And he turns to me and he says, "Hey, you bought some rags?" And I said, "Yeah, I bought some rags." I said, "They were good-looking rags." And I said, "Yeah, well, you want one?" He said, "Oh, yeah, I don't mind if I do." So at that point, I opened up the bag of rags, and, they popped out. They were all packed in there. They popped up like that, see. So I said, "Here, Frank," and I passed over the bag there, just like, like you'd pass over a Cracker Jack or something. So he reaches over and he pulls this rag out. It was purple, beautiful. It was velvet. And he said, "Gee, this is a nice rag." And he put it in his lapel pocket and hangs out. And so I started to look at the rags, and I discovered what the rags are made out of, what they are. For one thing, it's all of last week's fashions. They've ground them up. I found at least 3 parts of Nehru jackets. It's the kind of stuff that people buy. How many times have you bought something that was really in, and you bought it? It was in for about 8, 9, 10 minutes, and you bought it. You wore it twice, and halfway through the second wearing, you went out of style. Right in the middle of the block, there you are. You start the block, you're with it, and by the end of the block, people are laughing. They're sitting there, buy a horse, they're hollering. So you got to be careful about fashions like that. I think that's why a lot of people are going back to the basic roots. You can't be out of fashion if you're dressed, say, like Abraham Lincoln. You're making a definite statement. Would you please, if you will, Jim, please? Jim is such a distinguished man. He's a very serious person. He's like most pilots I know. They never smile. Pilot has very little reason to smile. He knows too much about life. He knows what can go wrong. He does. He has the feeling of the wind and the weather. Have you noticed that Lindbergh never smiled? Never. You rarely ever see an astronaut smiling. And yet they're always writing about the ecstasy of being up there in the blue. Oh, dude. Oh, I wish I could shimmy. I say, I wish I could shimmy like my sister Kate. She shakes it like jelly on a plate. I wish I could shimmy like my sister Kate. Papa-doo, papa-doo-doo. Papa-doo-doo, papa-pa. Hold it there, at ease. Reset that, James, and I hope you get that other one all set up in there, because we're going to need it. We're going to sneak up on that one. The big black one there, the mean one. Okay. We got a very, very nervous story here tonight. I just received a letter from a well, I guess I shouldn't use their name, but it's a place that they do literary biographies and stuff, and they sent me this letter, and they said, would you please send us information on how you began to write the way you write for our publication. Now that's a leading question. I mean, why are you the way you are, Jim, huh? Have you ever wondered why you're not more like Robert Redford? You have wondered. Hasn't done you any good, has it? That's right. And you're caged or imprisoned by the you that you are. There's no way to get out of it. And in spite of the fact that there are thousands of books on sale today, a new you can be yours for just 7 minutes a day. Eat granola and do push-ups and think clean thoughts and all that stuff. It never works. I've never known anybody to change. Have you, Jim, really? More than a tiny millimeter. And even then he slipped back. You are you, and you will remain you forever. Listen, little tycoons are born, not made. That's the truth. I mean, already there's a little kid walking around who's about maybe 19 months old, and he's still wearing Pampers. And, the whole works and shoveling in the pablum. That little kid, already at that age, he is a future chairman of the board of General Motors. And there's other kids that look just like him. They're eating the pablum and using the Pampers and all that stuff. They are future garage mechanics, and there's nothing they can get, nothing they can do. It's just the way it is. You're locked in. Very unpopular theory, too, by the way, this. Oh, yes. Oh, no. Part of the American dream is you can be any damn thing you want to be. That's right. A man sticks to it. That's called the Horatio Alger ideal. That doesn't make any difference what you are, that you can become anything you want to be. And that's why we go to movies where people are those things. Even though in real life, half of these guys are poor little schlumps that sit around and argue with their agent all day long, and they cry under the daybed when they're not arguing with their agent. Oh, I know too many actors. They're not like you see them on the screen, friends. Oh, no way. And this is part of the American dream. And so when I sat down and looked at that thing, it says, how is it that you write the way you do? And then the next paragraph explained it. It says, you have a certain surreal view that runs through your work. A surreal. And it says, for example, let us take the short story entitled Leopold Doppler, or the Great Gravy Boat Riot. The surreal elements of this story are not necessarily found in many American writers. And I said, well, that's true. There is surrealism in this, now that I think about it. It says, then they mentioned the story of Julia Childs meets Banjo Butt. You recall that story? You don't remember that story? Oh. And so I thought about this. Then they went on to say that your short story, Wanda Hickey, The Night of Golden Memories, the short story, particularly the scene in the Red Rooster, is pure surrealism. I said, that's true. It has nothing to do with realism, because realism is one thing. Surrealism is superrealism. Oh, that's different. Now, what you live in your daily life is plain realism, but surrealism is something else. Yes, Salvador Dali and those watches that come dripping down. And by the way, the watch is symbolic of the flexibility and the, let's say, the difficulty of analyzing, holding back, tabbing, capturing, codifying, formulating time. The dripping watch. Yes. And look out for things that drip. Yeah, and you know, speaking of these great moments, you know, and we all have great moments in our lives, and many times we turn away from them. I've had several great moments in flying that are so private and so. Did I tell you about the time I was flying out over the? I'll tell you now that I look back on it, I can't believe it. If you're a pilot, you'll know what this is. I was flying in a Helio Courier float-equipped plane over the Amazon jungles. Now, I was in the right-hand seat, and there were two of us in this plane. We were 1,200 miles from the nearest habitation. Nothing but rivers below us, and dotting around us over the great rolling foothills of the Andes. You could see the Andes off in one distance there, and the Ucayali River was creeping below us, filled with crocodiles and headhunters. Believe me, it's the truth. And it was just completely a carpet of green. If the plane went down there, there's just no way for you to ever get back. That is a fact. There's not even a guess. It's a fact. No coming back. And we are drifting along at 8,000 feet, heading back, we hoped, for civilization. And I'm sitting there in the right-hand seat, enjoying the whole scene. And the pilot is a very good pilot, a bush pilot, sitting next to me, an MD. And he's a pilot, so obviously. And we're flying along in the Helio Courier, 8,000 feet, and thunderstorms off in the distance, and this hot sun beating down, when a thing happened to me which was highly, highly interesting. Actually, it happened to us. It was not me, it was us. First of all, we drifted through about 17 condors that were floating high up 8,000 feet, and these babies got about a 12-foot wingspan, and we just drifted among them, and they're just wheeling around us. Well, as we're heading, we were heading south and vaguely vaguely west. We were heading towards a town of Pucallpa, which is in the, I don't know why I'm telling you this. This has nothing to do with what I'm about to do. This is how I got to write surrealism then, maybe, huh? So we're drifting along high up in the air at 8,000 feet, this little Helio Courier, which was a small one. It was 150 horses, and we're just banging along there. For those of you who don't know about the airplane, it's a very interesting plane. It's a STOL plane, very steep takeoff and very sharp glide characteristics. Interesting airplane. So we're drifting along up there, when all of a sudden the door came loose on my side. Now, this is a very light, small airplane, and everything had been stripped out of it for lightness and for range. We had a big tank behind us, a big rubber tank for gas, obviously, and that was about it. We couldn't carry anything else. And a pair of shoelaces would have given you trouble. You know, the spare shoelaces, you'd have been in real problems. So we're going along, and all of a sudden the door latch opened, and the doors, it swung. You know, just boom, boom, bam. It swung back and forth like that, see? So it swung outwards from me. Now, I looked down. I could see the float below me. And the door is swinging out, and he says, "You better get the door." He said, "God, you know, what's going on?" I says, "Well, just a minute." So I grab hold of the handle, and I'm pulling the door. And, of course, there was a big slipstream, but at the same time, the wind was coming in and holding the door out. So it was curious, because it should have pushed it back in, actually, but it wasn't. It was some kind of an eddy current that was coming in. And I'm pulling this thing away like that, and there's a tremendous uproar going on in the airplane, because this wind is blowing in. We're cruising along at about 140, maybe like that, and the wind is swirling around, tremendous wind banging everything around in the plane, when all of a sudden this thing just goes, and it sucks right out the door, just right out it went. The clipboard on which all our charts, all our frequencies, everything, just right out the door it went. And I could see it drifting down into the jungle. Just drifting from side to side. This thing was making big S turns as it was going down. I'm looking down. Our charts. And the pilot just looked over there, and his face got sort of green. He says, "Those were the charts." I says, "They were." He says, "Well, the river's there yet." I says, "Yes, it is." He says, "Well, there's no sense worrying about it now, is there?" I says, "No, we can't go down and get him, can we?" He says, "No way." And we just headed off into the unknown. No charts. And this is in the most uncharted part of the world. What charts we had were very, very crucial. And we just drifted on down. And at that point, you know, I thought, oh, well, what the hell? What will be, will be. Which is a pretty good way to look at it, because that's quite true. And right now, as I sit here, I think of those charts. Obviously, this plastic clipboard, it was one of these big, heavy fiber board clipboards with a big plastic top on it, snapped open, you know, and he had a magnifying glass on the top so he could read the chart. Then he had a protractor built on the side of it. And that is laying on the jungle floor someplace right now at this minute. And an anaconda snake is slowly creeping past it. Well, I have a feeling that many people grow up and their life is straight line. I mean, and they never become surrealists or have any interest at all in, say, Fellini films. To them, Fellini films don't mean anything. They're dumb. What is it, dumb? These guys walk around dressed like clowns. It's ridiculous. A bunch of Italians dressed like clowns. Give me a good John Wayne movie. Well, their life has been straight line. Now, I'm thinking about what was one of the prime elements in my early life that would have made my work have surreal. I've forever looked at the world from that day on as being slightly nutty. You notice that most writers look at the world as a serious, tragic thing. Oh, it's a fight, it's a struggle. They see life as a series of losing battles, and it's a tragic thing. To me, life has never been tragic. To me, life has been ecstatic. To me, life is an exciting, wild, funny thing, and whatever happens is part of it. And I'm not a kvetcher. To me, kvetching is a lost. To me, it's the gloom of the lost. Now, how do you get like this? Well, it's hard to tell you. I could say this, though. Now, humor comes out of different things. For example, You take a Woody Allen, or let's say a Mel Brooks, people like this, their humor comes out of being a minority and being angry, and they're the little skinny guy at school that never got picked on for any of the teams, and so they become the clown, and there's a bitterness that runs through their humor, like, boy, poor little me, and look at all those big guys like Robert Redford, and I don't get the girl, and this is another kind of humor. It's bitter. But then there's the humor of the Twain. Twain did not at any point feel like he was not one of the guys that got the girl. No way. But yet he had a sardonic view of everything. How did he get that way? Well, that's what I'm trying to explain here. In my case. How? Well, things that happen to you that give you a vision that in a sense is not given to other people. You were just lucky. You happened to be there. Well, I'll tell you, one of the things that remains one of my great surreal visions as from the time I was a little kid. Now, I was about 8 or 9, see? Roughly 9. And it was summer. Now, we lived on the outskirts of town. If you think in terms of, it would be like if you were living on the outskirts of White Plains, you lived where there's a few houses, a lot of houses, a couple of housing developments, and there are vacant lots. And then after a while, there's just fields, right? The fields begin. And there were fields out there, and there were vacant lots, and there were signboards, and there were gas stations, all the usual stuff. Well, right down the street, about a half a mile down this road that we lived near, there was a great big vacant field. Today it's a shopping center, but then it was just a big vacant field. And one early spring, we were always out on our bikes. These kids were out all the time riding our bikes. It was 9. I'd go down there to this place because the reason we went down there was that there was a river down there, and us kids would go down there and try to fish for bullheads, which we never caught. Or we would go down there. It was always reputedly fishing. Nobody ever caught anything. Then there was a ball diamond down there and a lot of stuff, And so we ride our bikes out. And one beautiful spring day, we rode out on our bikes. And there were a lot of trucks all of a sudden appeared in this vacant lot. And these guys had concrete mixers and their piles of wood and stuff like that. And so we figured, they're going to build a house or some big thing here. So we're hanging around. And this foreman was working on this job, and he says, come on, you guys, get out of here. Get the hell out of here. I don't want any of you guys stealing nails. See, we had a big thing. We would steal nails. Now, I don't know whether you've ever stolen nails from a place where people are building things, but that was a big deal in my set. Now, you might have been in the gas siphoning crowd. I was in that, too, at one time. But I was in the 2x4 swiping crowd because we were always building a cave or something, and to steal a 2x4 and a couple of pounds of nails, you could build a hell of a lot of stuff. So immediately we were drawn to any building site. Like flies to a dead horse. We were really drawn. So we were hanging around there, and they would say nothing. These guys just kept building, and they're building away there. Every day they're out there. There's about 50 guys hammering and sawing, and we'd watch this thing going up. Kids hang around, and we'd pick up pieces of tar paper they threw away and stuff. And this thing is beginning to emerge from the ground, what they're building. And by roughly the middle of June, this began the end of May, about the middle of June, you could see what it was. It was a fantastic thing they were building. And little did I realize at the time, of course, that this was going to become a prime symbol throughout much of my work. These guys built on this vacant lot a tremendous 4-story high ice cream cone. They actually built an ice cream cone. Well, I don't know how many of you have ever lived in the immediate proximity of a giant ice cream cone that overshadowed everything else in the area there. So just a few of us, incidentally, every last kid that was involved who saw this thing grow came to no good end. It affected them all one way or another. Flick, Schwartz, Bruner, and the lot. And I was certainly affected by it. And here was this big ice cream cone. So we, what are they going to do? They're building this big ice cream cone. It was tremendous. It was a cone standing on its end. Tremendous cone. Went up like that. And on the top, they had built a big framework built out of 2x4s and laths and stuff. And over it, they put like sheet tin. And it was billowy, and they painted it pink and white and chocolate colored. It was like a three-decker ice cream cone. And the cone itself was painted ice cream cone color, you know, like this, like tan, these sugar-type cones with crisscross lines on it, checkerboard stuff. And down at the bottom of the cone, they had windows down around the bottom, see, and the big, like awnings would come out, and it was an ice cream joint. And they had a big parking lot all around it. And it was the ice cream cone. And they call it, the name of it was Charlie's Ice Cream Cone. It was called Charlie's Cone. Tremendous big sign up for Charlie's Cone. 37 flavors. And it said triple-deck ice cream cones. They had pistachio nut. They had every known flavor of ice cream, bubble gum, all of them, see. And they opened up roughly July 4th. And they opened up with a fantastic celebration. They had flags out there, and they were giving away free ice cream cones. Well, naturally, you know, to kids under 10. So naturally, we came down like hell. See, we kept riding down there. It was about 4 miles on our bike, and we ride out there. And no, get out of here. You got to bring your parents. See, so you know, you're not going to hang around. So I go back and I drag my mother and the old man, you know, down there. And everybody went down to the ice cream cone on the opening day, and they actually gave them away. So we're all sitting around under the shadow of this enormous ice cream cone, tremendous one. I mean, it's 4 stories high. This is an enormous ice cream cone. And inside the cone, there were about 15 guys working, and they had red and white striped blazer-type coats, you know, with the straw hats, and they're dishing out the old ice cream, and they're in Charlie's ice cream cone. They worked in there. Well, this got to be a place where all the kids would go. And, you know, they'd go down there on their bikes. So all afternoon, you hang around the parking lot of Charlie's Ice Cream Cone. And a couple of kids like Jack Martin, you know, they're really tall. We had one kid that was 7 feet tall, and he was only in the 3rd grade, you know, so he got a job there. Have you noticed that the tall kids have got it all over all other kids? Have you noticed every high school athlete that's signing for $1,722 is over 7 feet tall? They have not signed a 5'9" kid in years. So these, you know, Jack Martin's back there and he's serving out the ice cream, and it was, you know, it was a big place. Well, then the winter came, and Charlie's Ice Cream Cone closed up for the winter, and they boarded the whole thing up. And the winter goes by, and now it's summer again. See, it's spring, and Charlie's Ice Cream Cone opened for about 3 weeks. And then, mysteriously, one day, it closed. It was just closed. And all the awnings were pulled up, but the ice cream cone remained. Shut up. Big sign on the outside said, closed. No trespassing. But we still hung around there. We'd hang around out in that parking lot. And you know, it was kind of great to be in the shadow of the big ice cream cone. And the ice cream cone would stand up against the sky. One of the great feelings was to stand at it and look straight up, because it was very narrow at the bottom. It was like a cone. See, it went out. It just arched out over your head. And you looked up. It was like looking at the bottom of a blimp or something. And the wind would blow over the top of it. See, and by the middle of the second summer, the paint was beginning to peel off Charlie's ice cream cone. And roughly September, nobody talked about it anymore. It was just down there. Everybody even really forgot about Charlie's Ice Cream Cone, that there ever was a place down there where all the kids went. And everybody would go down in the summertime and get triple-decked ice cream cones, and you'd buy a quart of caramel nut. And, you know, it was a whole big center. It just disappeared. People forget quickly. And the cone remained. Well, 2 years, maybe 3 years went by, and this cone became more and more battered. Big piece of metal would be out the side of it. And we began to play inside the cone. We were now about 12. And the place was completely, not only deserted, it was abandoned. And that's different. No longer were there even signs that said no trespassing. And the doors were torn off the hinges. And go inside where the cone was, where the people would work. And there were old metal tables that were all rusty in there, and there were bats living in there, and there were mice. And when you got inside, it was great, because the the plywood. They had built little plywood seating in it, but the plywood was all gone now. People had come in and stolen the plywood. And now you could look up the interior of the cone all the way up to the top. It's a fantastic cone. And you could see way up there holes in the roof 4 or 5 stories above you where guys had shot 22 bullets through it, and you could see all around the edges bullet holes, all of them, and birds' nests, and this giant ice cream cone inside an ice cream cone. And then one Saturday they announced in the paper that the ice cream cone was going to be demolished. And so me and Schwartz and Flick and about 50 other kids went down on a Saturday morning, and we're all standing around down there waiting to see what's going to happen. And then there it went. Down came the ice cream cone. They set charges of dynamite, and that great ice cream cone slowly tipped, just laid over on its side, and great clouds of dust rose. We all stood around on our Elgin bicycles. This enormous 4-story high ice cream cone just lay over on its side. I ask you, friends, how many people have you ever heard of in your life who've ever seen a 4-story high ice cream cone demolished by dynamite and come slowly tipping down through the blue sky until it lays like a great tin elephant, just blowing smoke up to the sky? The great ice cream, this tremendous ice cream cone. And Schwartz and Flick and I are all standing around looking at this thing. Enormous. It's like looking at a 7,000-foot cigar that's exploded. Or looking at somebody walking around wearing the brown derby on his head. It's a derby. And ever since that time, I have never looked at things the same as Woody Allen. It's all a tin ice cream cone about to slowly sink into the ground. And the bats flying around up at the top where the tin was fake ice cream. Yes, life, friends, is a giant tin ice cream cone. Beautiful, but just tin. And any minute now, ready to come down. Oh, wow. You know, you get into this kind of problem. You just don't turn back once you've seen things like this. And it wasn't until years later that I realized that ice cream cone, the giant tin ice cream cone, played a strange symbolic role in all of our lives. Don't forget, Princeton tomorrow, 8:15, Alexander Hall. I'll be there, looking mad. You'll be there too, tomorrow night.